Welcome. Call to order the Board of Adjustment meeting of August 2nd, 2018. This is my first meeting as chair, so you'll have to bear with me a little bit. I would like to make a few announcements. If you have cell phones or other devices that make loud noises, be sure to put them on the silent or airplane mode. And if you want to be heard other than the applicant, you need to fill out a sheet that's out front, and so you can be heard. And when you come forward to present the matter or to discuss the matter, you need to give your name and your address. And if you're the applicant, you need to present your application so the board will understand all the matters that are before them, and that would be most appreciative. So what do we have? We have our first item of business is to receive the minutes of the July 5th meeting. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Do I have to turn it on? Sorry. Got it? Motion passed. Continuance requests and withdrawals, we have requests by staff or applicants.
We have two requests for continuances. Item number 12, case number 14489 is requesting to continue this to the August 16th meeting.
Okay, do I have a motion for continuance on item 14489 to the August 16th meeting?
I move. I'll second.
Okay, please cast your votes. Motion passed. It's continued to August 16th. The second continuance is?
We have a second continuance, item number 11, case number 14515 is requesting to continue to the August 16th meeting.
And do I have a motion?
I move to continue it. I'll second.
Cast your votes. Motion to continue on August 16th is passed.
We also have one withdrawal, which would be item number 13, case number 14503.
And that does not require a motion, does it? Okay, so it's withdrawn. Okay, we have public hearings, items requiring separate vote. We have, would you clerk read the?
We have item number 1, case number 14491, request for a variance to maneuvering on street right-of-way in the I-2 Moderate Industrial District, located at 7421 North Classen Boulevard.
Madam Chairman, Ben Kirk, 105 North Hudson, Suite 1000. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Ballet, Oklahoma, regarding a request for a variance to allow for the trucks to maneuver in the right-of-way on southbound Classen, adjacent to the property in question. We've been trying to address some of the issues that were raised in the past meeting, and I apologize that we were unable to get the graphics that we wanted to use to be able to demonstrate the hardship and the fact that the alternate positioning of the loading dock area is not practical, but you have those hard copies in front of you now. Exhibit A is the proposed plan for which the variance is sought, and that calls for the loading dock to be adjacent to the south side of the existing building, but you have to have about a 75-foot ramp to be able to get the truck down to dock high to be able to unload it properly and into the building. So we need to have the ability for the trucks to be able to maneuver. With the radius that's proposed, they only need that one lane, that west lane on the south of the southbound 2 lanes on Classen, to be able to maneuver in and out. And as mentioned previously, the use of this maneuvering of the right-of-way is going to be very infrequent. It will only be a few times a year. I believe, as Madam Chairman observed in the previous meeting, that there are other businesses that use the Classen for purposes of maneuvering their trucks in and out along that area, and the only other option is 74th Street. And if you can look at Exhibit A, you will see that, I'm sorry, Exhibit B, my apologies. 74th is a two-way street. It's not a divided arterial like Classen is. And if we were to put the loading dock over there along the west side of the building, given the length of footage that we need for the ramp, it puts it right out there on the street, and we can't achieve the appropriate turning radius unless the guy is a miracle driver and in any event, it's going to block both lanes of traffic.
I believe that, I hate to interrupt, but I believe that was asked of you last time why you didn't pick the 74th Street. Is this your explanation as to why 74th would not be an accessible way to do the
Yes.
docking?
Yes. In addition, it will disrupt our parking plan that we need to achieve code, because we would lose the benefit of the parking spaces in the back by virtue of repositioning the loading dock. It would also impair our ability to have two-way traffic back there in that area, and it creates a very narrow passage from one parcel to the next. So for all of those reasons, we believe that we can demonstrate that without the variance, we are unable to utilize the building as we intend it to be used.
Questions?
I have a question. Do you understand that if we grant this variance, this ability to block the street partially would continue regardless of whether Ballet Oklahoma stayed there or not, or whether another future business located there?
Correct.
That's the concern, not your use. The other thing I would know, too, is this use was initiated by you all. This was an office, correct?
It was a multi-use.
The application says that you all have changed the character of the
We've
use of the
expanded
building.
it to include most of the space as a warehouse to be able to store our sets and our props and our
So
costume.
I don't really have a problem with occasional, use. The problem is that if you all leave this building and it's purchased by another business that in fact, has much more traffic in and out of their facility and many more trucks, we've opened the door to the fact that Classen could be obstructed, much more frequently than it might be with your use. That's my concern. And you tell me, is there any way to restrict this variance to the use of Ballet Oklahoma and nobody else?
The board could choose to restrict it for a period of time, a certain number of years or something, if the applicant were agreeable to that, and have them come back then when that term has expired.
If that remains an issue, Ms. McDivitt and I have spoken previously, but we would ask that it be a minimum of 10 years.
Anybody else on the board share those concerns?
That was my concern last time, continues to be my concern. I think that the idea was that we kind of go back to the drawing board and see if there are some changes that we can make to the application, and we get the same application with a little bit better demonstration of the hardship. And I certainly appreciate the hardship. Do you know how long it takes to load this, how long the impediment would be? And you said it'd only be on one lane of Classen here, but...
Well, they would back in and unload the truck and then pull right back out.
Yeah, the unloading process, though.
It's only the backing in process that really is the impairment to the use of the right-of-way. So that's even less frequent than the actual use of the area, because it's only the one way in that's the problem.
Yeah, again, I think, it depends on the other members of the board here, but that was my primary concern, was the future use, and the only way I could see supporting it would be some kind of temporal, we can't condition this on the ownership, so some kind of temporal condition. I might be comfortable with 4 or 5 years. And again, if the board doesn't want to support any kind of variance, I can certainly see that as well.
I could support.
Question before I ask somebody else who's going to speak on behalf of the applicant. Is that correct? Signed up? Is it Jess? Oh, I'm sorry, wrong. agenda item, sorry. You have already laid the concrete for the dock, right? The docking area for the truck, or you're laying the concrete?
Yes.
I thought I saw some depression that looked like it might be the one lane.
We had
for the
some
truck.
issues with our contractor and whether or not we had to have a permit, and all that, and we just stopped the process and did not complete pending the resolution of the variance.
If I'm allowed to weigh in on this, as I said the last time, I don't feel, I've been out there a number of times because a lot of times I go down Classen or up Classen for different reasons. It's not a heavily traveled area. There are other areas just down the street and the other ways where it appears that maneuvering, whether it's proper or not, I don't know if they are permitted or not, there are a number of places where there's maneuvering on the right-of-way out at that location. And they do have a design for the docking of it, and I would think it wouldn't be difficult just to drive up and then dock it and exit. I don't think 74th Street is a viable location at all, and because you wouldn't want that truck getting back on Western at all, I don't think, one way or the other. But that's, I'm not sure what you added on this, except you added the parking or some of the other areas on your diagram that you just
Are you
fleshed
looking
out.
at A or B, Madam Chairman?
Pardon?
Which graphic are you looking at?
Your exhibits, A and B, what are the
A, we
additions?
put the dimensions in to show you where the ramp would hit the grade, so you can see that we don't have enough ability for the trucks to maneuver on site. They have to come in off of Classen to access the ramp and give us the ability to have a dock-high loading area. And for B, I wanted you to see that it's really impractical to put the ramp back there on the west side of the building because you can't achieve the appropriate backing radius off of 74th Street without a great deal of difficulty, if at all.
I'm going to concur with Mr. Merchant and agree I can support 5-year variance in that way, because again, I'm not going to support a variance that runs in perpetuity, not knowing. And we all know that the city changes and uses change, and none of us knows what that area will look like. So I would support a 5-year if that's acceptable to you.
Is that a renewable variance? In other words, do we have to come back?
You would have to come back.
Make the same application all over again, or just mention that we're still using it the same way that you have allowed us to do it the last 5 years?
You would need to make a new application after 5 years, or cease using it.
What it would allow, if the use had changed and the neighbors, it began to be problematic to have that truck in the way, people would have, the community would have the opportunity to have a voice and to weigh in. If it was working and there were no objections to it, in all likelihood, you would come back, and in all likelihood, it would be approved perhaps for another period of time. That would be up to that board.
All right.
That's my thought. I understand that it's a burden. I understand that some people don't like to grant conditional variances based on some type of time frame, but here we're on such thin ice anyway. That's the only way I could see supporting the application.
Is that a motion?
It can be a motion. I'd make a motion to approve case 14491, term limited to 5 years.
I'll second it.
Cast your votes. Motion passes for 5 years.
Thank you all.
We have item number 2, case number 14501, request for a variance to the maximum height of an accessory pole sign in the C4 General Commercial District located at 7501 South Choctaw Road.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. This is a situation in which a ODOT project has created the need for my client to move an existing sign It's a bit of a unique situation in that if you note in the staff report, they make reference to staff's inability to find a permit. So what I will tell you, I've given you two things to review. One that is entitled the Thunder Travel Plaza Sign Survey. The other is, the first page says Anderson Travel Plaza. The reason I'm showing you the Anderson Travel Plaza materials is my client purchased this site in 2008. These are the marketing materials that were put forth at that time. In addition to its location on the highway, one of the pieces of the property that made it valuable was the 90-foot sign that existed with the visibility that was created by that sign. If you look at the second to last page, you will see, again, in the marketing materials, the highlighting of the signage that the site maintains. So this is a bit of an unusual case. It's a case that in years past the boards have treated a little differently than typical sign variances because of the fact that the only reason we're here is because ODOT has taken the right-of-way in which the sign currently lies. Therefore, we are forced to move it. It's not a non-accessory sign where there's, revenue generated from it to where you might be compensated for that loss. Because this is an on-premise sign, we are compensated only for the cost to actually move it, not for the cost to come before this board and seek a variance. So what I ask that my client do is retain a sign company to do a sign study. So in addition to ODOT's creating a hardship, the other thing that creates a hardship here is a visual barrier. So as you will see, if you turn the page on the sign study, what these sign companies do is they take bucket trucks, and you can see it on the page that's displayed on the screen now. They take bucket trucks out to the site and erect those to a height similar to what the sign will be, and then they transpose the sign so they can see exactly from what distance the sign is visible. So based upon the study, what the sign company recommends, based upon various points up and down I-40 that you'll see through this sign study, is that 90 feet is the minimum necessary, that fourth element, to be able to alleviate the hardship on the safety ability to be seen. So you can flip through and see from the various points at various distances, but if you flip towards the back, and I believe it's 18.0 is the page, this is where you will see that the sign really just becomes visible at the 90 feet from westbound traffic. So again, we find ourselves in a unique position because of the ODOT taking. We believe that there are multiple hardships, starting with the loss of visibility, frankly, the loss of one of the most appealing pieces of the property while my client bought this particular piece of property. I reviewed the title documents. Nowhere in the title documents did it reference in any way the fact that there was a sign that was not erected properly. So I'm not sure what the circumstances were, but I can tell you that every image I've been able to find of this property dating back decades, that sign has been there. Additionally, Member Austin is the only one here, but he will recall, perhaps, across the street, across I-40 is a Love's. I represented Love's on a variance application for that sign. That sign exists at 102 feet. The reason that we arrived at 102 feet on that sign was due to a similar sign study. The sign studies are helpful in that it allows you to truly see the minimum necessary. Sometimes the clients don't like it. The clients want as high as they can get. What the sign study shows is where that number is in terms of visibility, and here it's 90 feet. So again, it's 12 feet less than was granted on the other side of the street, presumably because the other side of the street has some other issues. But with that said, we do believe we meet the elements necessary for a variance. Be happy to answer any questions and ask for your approval.
I have just a couple of questions. I just verify from John. The records don't go back that far to know one way or the other, and you've made a search yourself, right, regarding whether or not there was a permit granted for the original.
Right.
The permit records go back to 1984, so it could have been permitted possibly before that.
Okay. with respect to what's present there on the property, what sign, isn't there a 50-foot or some kind of sign that's not the one you've requested? What sign is up right now?
So my understanding is all the signs are currently up. Well, okay, so the bottom image is all the signage that exists today. And so the only sign that doesn't meet code is this one 90-foot sign. Everything else is within the framework of the C4 zoning district.
And that sign is been moved or not moved?
Yeah, in fact, what we're going to be able to do is reduce some of the clutter. So what you see in the top image is what is proposed, and so we're actually taking what is now kind of multiple signs, and we'll put them onto one marquee, all within the square footage allowed under the C4 district.
Okay.
There, yeah. So what you see there is what we propose.
Questions from the board?
I'm not sure if this board is tasked with, I certainly appreciate your takings point, but I'm just not sure it's within the purview of this board to remedy what is arguably a taking. And if any instance where someone thinks that a taking might have occurred, they come before the board. I just don't think that's within our purview to remedy.
Well, I'm not asking for it to be, sure, I'm not asking for it to be remedied. I'm saying that's one of the unique factors here, but for the taking, we wouldn't be here. We'd have a sign that had been in existence for decades, and we wouldn't need to come here. So I'm not saying that alone. It's just traditionally this board has viewed cases in which there has been a taking a little differently than an individual that just wants a taller sign because they want it. I still think we can meet the elements aside from that. I still think there's a hardship because of the visibility issues as demonstrated by the sign study. I still think there's a hardship because my client would be losing a valuable piece of the real estate that they bargained for when they bought the property.
That area, of course, when I went out yesterday, I was lucky to get out alive because it was all under construction. But you couldn't go back where you came from. But
Sure.
That's kind of a desolate area, not well-developed, kind of rural. Although I think I noticed a balloon or something on top of the building or some kind of marquee thing on top, and I saw it. And I don't know that, personally, I don't know that I would need to see your sign to know that I could take the exit and find your location. However, there are other signs all the way. The Loves was approved, and then there's, how tall is that sign across the street?
North of I-40?
Huh?
North of I-40?
Yes.
102 feet.
No, there was one east. Isn't there another one east?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Okay, there was another one east. I didn't know what the height of that.
There are taller signs there because of what you touched on, because of the lack of development. People are tending to drive at a much faster pace, and so the need to be aware of your destination comes much quicker. You see the trees, you see how it curves there, because I-40 and 240 are merging right about that same point. That's what's creating the need for the height.
And I think, as you've said, you are not getting compensated, the taking for replacement, you're just getting compensated for the moving of it to some location.
That's right. We got compensated for the value of the dirt, and then, it's not like a non-accessory sign to where there'd be a revenue portion of the taking. Here, they're just looking at the raw dirt, and they paid us for the value of the dirt.
And in this particular case, there's no permit. So you would probably still need to be getting one even if you didn't have an action. Mr. Counselor, do you have any comments you want to make regarding the issue on the taking issue or anything else? Other questions?
So the surrounding signs that exist right now, other than the 102-foot sign, 102-foot sign, I understand they were granted a variance. My understanding of that application, though, is that there was an existing sign that was in the way of that sign. And so to get over that, a variance was needed. And so maybe there's some obstructions here with some of the trees or something, but I do think that's a unique situation. One of my other concerns is if all the surrounding signs are compliant, all the surrounding sign owners are going to come to us seeking a variance because they know they can get one granted now.
And I don't know that this sign, that there wasn't a permit. I mean, I had a situation 2 weeks ago where my client was out clearing a piece of his property on an I-35 in Hefner. He had the proper permits. A neighbor inquired, the city's Public Works Department told the neighbor that no permits were issued. They immediately issued a stop order. Thankfully, for the Public Works Department, my client keeps meticulous records and was able to show them the permit that they had, in fact, issued just weeks earlier. So just by the fact, and I'm not meaning to disparage the city in any way, but just because there isn't proof of a permit doesn't mean a permit wasn't properly issued.
I agree. I'm not sure how we get to the presumption that there was a permit when there's not a permit. I think the presumption needs to be that there's not a permit. And I understand that there are issues with the records dating back and all of that, but notwithstanding all of that, I think our presumption needs to be that it's an unpermitted sign.
And even if it wasn't, I still think that the elements necessary for a variance would be met, permit issue aside.
And I reluctantly, I'm going to concur with Mr. Box. The fact that the existing sign was taken by ODOT against that is the only reason that they are here today, is because they had to relocate the sign. And so typically, I mean, the fact that there was no permit either pulled or that can be found is problematic, but it's not a deal breaker for me. The fact that this was basically a condemnation and you lost your sign, and it affects the visibility of the property, and your owner has a right to conduct his business and pursue his business interests. So with some reluctance, I'm going to make a motion to approve the application.
Second.
I'll second it.
Cast your votes.
Thank you.
We have item number 3, case number 14505, request for a variance to the minimum 150-foot frontage to a public or private road in the AA Agricultural District located at 11510 Southwest 89th.
I'm Richard Calvert, 11510 Southwest 89th Street, and I applied for the variance, kind of a story, but when I built the house 25 years ago, it was my parents' property. They had got it from our grandparents, so it had been in our family for years, but I built the house there on 8.7 acres, that back section, and like a year later, my brother built the one in the front, and there's 2 houses down the same driveway, and when I applied for a permit to get a building put up and discovered that I had it had gotten to where we don't meet our ordinance because I don't have the 150-foot frontage on 89th Street that my house was addressed off originally. So that's what and now that I've discovered that, then it kind of scared me, because if we had a storm or something, I couldn't rebuild my house. I can't get a building permit or anything for that unless I get this variance. So, I mean, that would be my hardship, is that, I can't even maintain or can't do any improvements to my home now. And it's been there for 25 years. Now, this quarter section was the family farm. I asked that they do both because my parents' house, the other site between my house and my parents' house, which is the one that's addressed on Mustang Road, that one would be also affected. That's the only 2 properties of that off that driveway that's affected. And I mean, my dad had said at one time, when my kids get older, he'd give that to one of my kids, and he'd give my brother the one up in front, which is 2.5 acres. And I'm thinking that if it kind of meets the exact same scenario as what my property does. We've looked at all the different options and tried to figure it out. I talked to John here, and he worked with me, and he decided that this would be the best approach to remedy the situation where I would be afforded the opportunity to get a building permit for my property. And I hope that clears it up. I don't know.
So that is your showing for your hardship requirements, is that correct? And you have a recorded easement that's been utilized?
I have yes, through the county, when we built the property years ago, 25, or whenever, I think it's 25 years ago. Well, there's an easement filed. It's I don't, it's a 40-foot long, wide easement, granted roadway or right-of-way to my property. It's filed at the county, but, and which would suffice, I believe, for access for if I'm, like when, I'm never going to sell my house, but if when I pass away, if my kids had to sell it, they would be able to, they need to be able to sell it and have access and right away. And so I assume I couldn't even sell my property at this point until I get this variance, because it.
You're asking the board for a variance to the minimum 150 foot of frontage to your road, and this is, I think the board has heard me comment about this. When families divvy up their parcels, they create hardships for the families down the line, and I wish people would quit doing that, but I'm just weighing in. It looks like he has sustained a hardship requirement. Does any of the board members have any comments or questions?
Is there any other discussion or anybody here to speak on
Any
this
other
matter?
discussion from anybody?
Make a motion to approve case number 14505.
I'll second it.
Motion and second. Cast your votes.
Thank you.
Item number 4, case number 14507, request for a variance to allow access from an arterial street when access is available from a local street in the AA Agricultural District located at 13501 Hidden Canyon Road.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Broadway. My wife and I own 2 parcels of land, 5-acre tracts, with addresses at 13501 Hidden Canyon Road and the second at 14132 Southeast 134th Street. Both of these 5-acre tracts have 330 feet of frontage on Southeast 134th Street. And on the picture above, and I don't know if you guys are able to see that from where you sat, but I have in black the proposed home site, which is closer to 134th Street. And just above that, the barn that we plan on building. My wife and I own horses, and that's the reason for the property in a nutshell by itself. But you'll also notice a small building that we're proposing to put there close to 134th Street to the right of the home site in the future. There's a white line that you see that runs kind of diagonal through that 5-acre tract, and that is what I'm told a common area that I'm not allowed to build on that 5 acres because of public drainage. There's some tin horns that run underneath Southeast 134th. We're kind of set in a valley there, so the water all drains from either side of the hill and into that area and then runs south there along, I don't want to call it a creek, but it is a pretty good sized ravine, and that's where they came up with the Hidden Canyon neighborhood subdivision name in itself. So that part of the 5 acres tract on the 14132 section I'm not allowed to build on at all. But the reason that I'm here before you today is asking for a variance on the code that says that I'm unable to bring access off of a main arterial road if I already have access off of a private road. If you wouldn't mind going back to that one right before, you'll notice there on 134th Street, there is a small area there that I don't know if it was cleared by the people who owned it before me and they had plans of using it or not. Now, I did take a couple of trees out of that, but they weren't large trees at all, just to kind of open that up. As you go up Hidden Canyon Road, that first little entrance there to the property, it looks to be a driveway. It is not a driveway. It is, I think they used that to bring heavy equipment in and out. The people that owned it before me, I can only assume, had a storm shelter business where they would cut the hole in the concrete in the garage and take that concrete and build a storm shelter in that deal. And the reason I say that, I have found cuts of concrete all over this property where they've been going in there and dumping it in big piles of dirt that I can only assume were, used for that purpose. But I think that's where they were bringing the heavy trucks in and out of. Now, the second driveway area there where the barn sits now, or the proposed barn site, is where a mobile home sat for quite some time. It had been repossessed and removed from the property. before I bought it. But that was the original home site. As I said earlier, horses are my wife's passion in life, and the reason that we started looking for property to begin with. And we've had several people out that are horse people that know a lot about horses and raising them, and looking at our land even before we bought it, and were talking to us about how that land would best be used for the horses. And laid out the way that it is now is what the general consensus was, with the house being in the front. Because this land slopes so greatly from, as you're looking at the picture, left to right, it would be east to west, at the front of the property at the 134th Street side, we decided to use that as the home site, set the barn where the original trailer once was, and use the pasture because it's more of a level ground in the back, and it also had very good grass through there. Now, I mentioned the slope of the land. It is a pretty intense slope. From where we built the house pad to southeast 134th Street, there is, from my best ability to measure with a laser level, a 16 to 17 foot drop in elevation from 134th Street to where our house is, and that's in 132 feet of length. Now, if I were to bring a driveway in on that side to the front of the house where it faces 134th Street, to make a gated entrance, I would have to come in about 40 foot off of the road, Hidden Canyon Road, which would limit me to 90 foot of making up a 16-foot drop in elevation, which would make for a pretty substantial slope. Now, if I were to use gravel in that area, it would be difficult to maintain. Of course, the runoff from that, if it were to be dirt, would be difficult to maintain as well. And even so, if I were to use concrete for that, if I were to be able to afford concrete with concrete prices today, I really feel like the ability for me to traverse this elevation change in such a short amount of time at such a heavy slope would make it almost impossible, if not at the very least very difficult, in snowy and icy conditions. Whereas if I were to come in off of 134th Street, it's already a cleared area. It's a very slight and gentle slope up to the home site and back around. In order to also bring that around off of 134th Street in front of the home, I would have to remove a large amount of trees there, probably 12 to 15 trees in that area, and do an awful lot of grading and dirt work to try and make up that elevation, bring down, because from the road, southeast 134th, we've got about a 3-foot elevation before it tops out and then starts to drop. So I would have to cut all this out and then bring it down gently to the home. And there's no real way for me to get around the home and bring the driveway around, because to the right, as you're looking at that picture, of the home side is where the septic tank and the lateral lines will all be as well. So in my view, the most reasonable thing to do would be to bring that access in off of 134th Street, take that gentle slope to where I wouldn't have to concrete the entire thing, and still be able to make it in and out reasonably in the presence of ice and snow. If you wouldn't mind the next slide. This is just a picture for a little bit of perspective. I'm standing kind of there in the garage, or right at the face of the garage, and you can see the degree of the slope. That tree line, it raises about 3 foot beyond that tree line before it starts to drop back down to 134th Street at that point. And then the next, please. And this is just kind of looking up. Actually, this isn't where the driveway would be. This is just to give a little bit of perspective to see where Hidden Canyon Road is from the home site, and a little bit of the perspective of the slope. And this is the area that I spoke of earlier that had already been relatively cleared. This is looking at southeast 134th Street. Now, you'll notice a little bit of a ravine there. If I were to bring the driveway in from Hidden Canyon Road and around to the front of the house, this ravine starts up there at that top corner, so I would have to somehow divert all that to cover, or to fill that in so that I could bring my driveway in over top of that. Whereas here, I just have to lay a tin horn and drive right in. The water will be pretty easy to move from there. This is a perspective shot from Hidden Canyon Road. Now, this is just a little added thing that I put on here, turning out onto Southeast 134th. This is looking east on 134th Street. The speed limit here is 45 miles an hour. This is a very rural area. I think it'd be pretty safe to say the speed limit is not always adhered to out here. So as you're standing or pulling out on 134th Street and you're going to head west, so you will be turning left here instead of looking up right, there is only a matter of a few seconds that a car would have to react to you coming over that hill at 45 miles an hour if you're pulling out and into that intersection. This would also be a help to me, and I have a 16-year-old daughter who's just about to start driving as we move out here. And this always concerns me. As I drive in and out of this property, when I turn onto Southeast 134th Street, I will always make sure that my eastbound lane is clear beyond the hill that is down the road, so that I can turn out and stay in the eastbound lane until I'm able to get up to speed to get into the westbound lane, to avoid any kind of car coming over that hill at a high rate of speed and having to react to me. It just seems like a very, I had no way of looking up. I tried to look up if there's been any accidents there. I had no way of finding that information. But it has always been a concern for both me and my wife. And the next slide shows a view from the proposed driveway site. You can see that it greatly extends that distance both directions. And while I recognize that that's not a part of the hardship, just certainly something that I thought was reasonable to bring up with the speed limit being as high as it is there.
I noticed that I drove out there yesterday. I noticed there are a number of other places that are accessing from the arterial street. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I don't know when the city actually annexed that area, and I don't know when those homes were actually built. So I don't know if that was ever an issue that would have to come before the variance board. And just beyond us to the east, there are actually two homes that have been built, actually one that I think has just been completed, and the other that is finishing up in finality, that both have access to 134th Street. However, that may have already had a gate at that intersection. I have no way of knowing that either.
Any questions or comments from the board?
I'll accept the topography issues in the driveway. The bigger issue for me is the safety of getting onto 134th, whether it be from a driveway or whether it be from a side street. And it appears to me that it's clear that your sight lines from your proposed driveway are much better. For the young driver, and if you've got horses, I assume you're going to be trailering?
Yes, sir.
Which, and 45, it is tempting to drive much faster than that. And the fact that you don't have good sight lines, I mean, it's just, as a parent, I would be concerned too, for my family, my wife and my children. So I'm going to support the application.
Yeah, I think one of the comments that is common among board members when we have an issue with an application is to see if you've thought through alternatives and things like that. I think it's pretty clear that you've thought through all the alternatives in this case and come to what you think is the best solution. And I tend to agree with you. I think you've met the elements. So if there's no one else to be heard on the matter, then.
We have a motion and a second, and I'm learning how to switch the machines on. Do I have a second?
I'll move to approve and then.
Second.
Sorry, I preempted. Now we have a motion and a second. Are we ready to cast our vote? It passed.
Thank you very much.
We have item number 5, case number 14508, application for special exception of Carl Osborne to allow a mobile home to serve as a temporary second dwelling to relieve a medical hardship in PUD 157, which is an RA district located at 13517 Silver Meadow Road.
Good afternoon. Carl Osborne, 13517 Silver Meadow Road. I'm asking for this variance for my sister to be able to keep her mobile home on the site because of her health problems. She has several different health problems, and it's hard for her to be completely dependent upon herself. As much as all of us like to be dependent upon ourselves, we do need help sometimes. Even myself, I need help. But I'm asking for this variance to be able to help her to be able to live a comfortable life and in an area where she can be around some family. She has no other family other than a brother in Texas, which is way too far away. So other than that, that's about all I got.
I believe you asked for 3 years, is that correct?
That's what they said that I could ask for, was 3 years.
And you provided all the documentation to the
Yes, he did.
Development Services. Board members?
Yeah, if there's no other discussion, I'd move to approve the case number 14508 for the reasons that it meets the statutory requirements.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. The motion passed for 3 years.
Thank you very much.
Item number 6, case number 14509, request for a variance to the maximum number of accessory signs in the R1 Single Family Residential District located at 4021 South Walker Avenue.
Afternoon, my name is George Marquez with Frankfurt Short Bruges, 5801 Broadway Extension, Suite 500. So I'm here representing the MAPS office, requesting a variance to add building signage to the building. We currently do have a monument sign that's sitting along South Walker. And so in order to be consistent with center number 1, MAPS would like to add a building sign to the northeast corner of the facility. So do you have any questions?
And the first facility is the one on Rockwell?
Yes, sir.
So it's got a monument sign, and then on the facing, on the
Yes, sir.
exposure to Rockwell, it says MAPS 3 Health and Wellness?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I have no objection.
Is that a motion?
If there's no more discussion and no objection, I'll make a motion to approve case number 14509.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes.
Thank you.
Passed.
Item number 7, case number 14510, request for a variance to the 150-foot frontage to a public or private street in the AA Agricultural District located at 9900 South Richland Road.
Hi, I'm Darrell Shackelford. My son and I bought this property 8-9 years ago, and with the idea that we would, both build a farm home on it. Since then, he's passed away, and so now we kind of put things on the back burner for 5 or 6 years, and we go to get a permit, and we found out that we're landlocked, lack of frontage. Well, we thought we'd done our due diligence when we bought the property. Being rural and all, we, didn't know what frontage was, for one, but I did know what floodplains were and did know what road easements were. And so we made sure that we were out of the floodplain and we had a road easement, and we thought that, we were in the good until we went to get a permit, and as it turns out that, we're lacking frontage. And, since before applying for a permit, we went out and bought some materials, and so we're there. I mean, peculiar circumstances that, like I say, we got access and everything to it. It's just that we don't have the frontage. And the hardship of the situation is that without the 150 foot of frontage granted to us anyway, that kind of devalues the property, as well as, we can't build our home on it. So I do ask if you would grant me a variance.
In the report that's provided us, it says a variance will allow the applicant to obtain building permits, but does not guarantee access. You're aware of that?
We do have access. But
Okay.
yes, I do.
But our action today does not guarantee you access. It's that access, the easement agreement that you have.
I do have
And that's a
access
private
agreement.
matter.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? You're asking for a variance to the 100-foot frontage, and we had a much similar case earlier at this meeting where there's access with an easement, but parcels are divided up, and then it creates problems down the line from family members or those who sell otherwise. Did I get your address, sir? I'm sorry.
9900 Richland Road is where the property address is. Actually, I live in War Acres at this time. Would you like that address?
Thank you. Any questions or comments regarding this?
Make a motion to approve case number 14510 that has met the statutory requirements for variance.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to approve case number 14510. Cast your votes. The variance is granted. Motion passed.
Thank you.
Item number 8, case number 14511, request for a variance to the use of metal facade and the internal pedestrian access for parking lots over 200 parking spaces in PUD 380 district located at 13200 Northwestern Avenue.
Good afternoon. My name is Ted Johnson. My address is 2311 West 22nd Street, Suite 208, Oak Brook, Illinois. I am Costco Wholesale's Development Director for Midwest Projects. Costco is currently the contract purchaser of the property that was just mentioned off of the Turnpike. And we're asking for two variations. Currently, there's a prohibition in the PUD that is applied to this site. That's PUD 380, which was approved by the city in January of 1991, approximately 28 years ago. In discussing the PUD with the owner of the property, Dr. Dar, as well as his engineer who's been working with him for the last 30 years, they put that restriction in to basically prevent the construction of prefabricated metal buildings with exposed metal cladding. What we are proposing is to install high-quality, pre-finished architectural metal panels on the warehouse building. We have been using this material probably for the last 10 years, so it wasn't even around 28 years ago when the PUD was established. We were initially surprised when we heard about the prohibition because when we were looking at the site, we noticed that there are numerous buildings to the west in Chisholm Creek, which basically use the same metal panel. Again, it's a very high-quality pre-finished panel, and we've been using this as our design in many of the warehouses. I believe I provided the board with some photos of existing buildings. What you see in front of you are the proposed elevations for this location. And if you can advance a few. Here's pictures of actual warehouses that we've recently opened with this ribbed metal architectural panel installed. We believe granting of the variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood in that metal is being used, in the development directly west of us, and I've been told by staff it's also being used recently in other locations through the city. With respect to the second request, we're requesting this variance to eliminate the requirement for specific internal pedestrian access points within the parking lot.
Can I interrupt you for a second and ask Cindy to go back to that slide that showed the walk area and the red bench there? Stop there. Now let's talk about your parking spaces.
Okay. So the requirement is to have numerous sidewalks throughout the parking lot when your parking count exceeds, I believe it's 200 spaces. We're at, I think our count is at 724, and by placing the sidewalks, the actual sidewalks, probably every 3 parking bays, it would reduce the number of stalls to well below what Costco is comfortable in opening a building with. Because of the configuration of the property, in fact, can we go to the site plan, please? Yes, thank you. When we start breaking these parking bays up and reducing the parking, there's no way I can expand to gain those parking spaces back. We do provide a pedestrian sidewalk from the main entrance of the building, which is that 45-degree angle that you see. There is a sidewalk that goes from the main entry to the frontage road of Kilpatrick Turnpike. We also have another sidewalk from Northwestern on the back end of the building. So anybody who is coming from outside of our parking lot does have pedestrian access to get to the building. The way we design our parking lots, we have oversized spaces, we have oversized or larger driveway widths than your code requires. We find that the member, after shopping at the warehouse with the cart, will walk down the driveways, walk between the cars to get to their trunk to put the merchandise in their trunk. Where we have these separate pedestrian ways, unfortunately what we find is a member who's parked adjacent to them will put the cart in the sidewalk and not walk a few parking stalls away to put the cart in the cart corral where it should go. So we're constantly taking carts from those sidewalks when they really should be placed in the cart corral.
How many of your other stores have the pedestrian access?
Well, all stores have to have the pedestrian access, like we're showing at this store, for ADA requirements. So every Costco will have the one sidewalk that goes from the front entry to the nearest right-of-way. In this case, we put another sidewalk on the south side of the building for anyone who may want to come from Chisholm Creek over to shop. I don't know if any board member knows Costco. I mean, this would be our first store in Oklahoma City. I think our next closest would be Tulsa.
And I've shopped there. I was a member and shopped there, and I can interrupt you. The image that showed the park bench and the little sidewalk area, is that part of what you're asking relief from, or would that be a part of this project?
No. What you saw in that picture was the ADA required sidewalk from the entry to the nearest right-of-way. That was the city of Chicago, and where that sidewalk intersected with Ashland Avenue was also a bus stop, so we put a bench in there for anybody who would be waiting for a bus.
I have a question for staff. The application makes reference to the 24-foot lane width that they construct. What is the requirement?
Well, the requirement for lane width is 24 feet. The requirement for parking spaces is 8.5 minimum, which most people don't go to the minimum.
It says the proposed
18.
layout contains larger parking stalls, the 10 by 20, and a larger drive aisle, 24 foot, than required by the city zoning ordinance. It sounds like the 24 foot exceeds what we require.
I believe it is 24 is what we're requiring.
Okay. I can tell you, though, as a consumer at Costco, that the parking lot feels more open and safer, as you push your purchase out. And as somebody that hates to get your doors dinged or hates to feel like, you're parking this close to each other, the larger stall widths for parking are appreciated.
Yeah, and also the length, and probably I should have said it creates a larger, effectively creates a larger driveway width, because most of your ordinances, you probably have 18-foot depth stalls.
18 foot for ours.
So we have 20, so we're actually making that 24 a 28-foot drive.
As a shopper there, it did not feel unsafe to, traverse the parking lot and to take your thing and then, put your basket in the appropriate place so that it could go back to the store.
My concern is the staff had an unfavorable consideration I'd just like you to address. Appears to be adequate space in parking lot, nothing peculiar to about the property warrant the grant to the pedestrian pathways. Is there anything that you could offer in terms of the pedestrian pathways as an all or nothing? Because I think that's a huge parking lot, and I would like to see a little more pedestrian access, even though you do have the larger stall areas and you do have the openness. I feel just your two sidewalks would not be sufficient as far as I can tell. I defer to other board members, but I'd like you to address that, please.
I think,
sure.
just really quickly, as a corollary point here, could you go back to the site plan? Sorry to make you keep flipping around, but I think this will be helpful to address both points. And this, while she's loading that, can you show what compliance would look like if you were in compliance, or what you would be required to do under the code?
If I recall the requirement, I've got to place the sidewalks, is it within 60, 100 feet?
If I remember correctly, I believe it's, well, that's to the right-of-way. I believe it's 150 feet from a parking space has to be to the pedestrian walkway.
Okay.
Now, how many would have to go in there? I don't know the calculation.
So let's start at the bottom of the site plan. Our parking bay is 64 feet. So it could stay, the first bay can stay, the second bay can stay, but now I'm at 128 feet, and I've got to have a sidewalk 150 feet. Well, if I go to the next bay, that exceeds it. So for every 2 parking bays, I've got to put in a is it a 5-foot? I don't recall, I'm sorry. We've got to put in a pedestrian passageway. They range from 5 to 6 feet. Then, I'm not sure if the community allows parking bumpers. Because if you got a pedestrian way and you're parking on either side of that, you have to stop the car. To throw curbing, with the sidewalk elevated, that's where we have the problem of people who will, their car is parked right next to the sidewalk, cart corral is 10 spaces away, they just put their cart right on that sidewalk. So for every 2 bays, I would have to have one of these pedestrian connections in order to meet the code.
And in terms of, consumer behavior, most people exit their cars in parking lots like this and go to the back of the car. And that's how they walk through the parking lot, to the store.
Yeah.
That's what most of us do. And the fact that you've got that 24 width and you've got a deeper parking space, so you pick up almost 2 foot if the car pulls all the way to the front. Again, just as somebody who has shopped at Costco regularly in Tulsa, the parking lot did not feel like you were taking your life into your own hands. You contrast that with a mall parking lot where the spaces are smaller and you really, you watch yourself and your kids in terms of the traffic. The Costco parking lot felt much more open and that you had, room to safely walk from your car to the store.
And as a planner, typically I see these requirements required for multiple retail users, such as west of us in Chisholm Creek. So you've got the shopper who wants to go from one store to the other and may have to cross the parking area. We're not going to have any of that type of shopping. The member is going to park in the parking lot, go into the warehouse, shop, go back to the vehicle. Again, we put the sidewalks in basically to let anybody in the adjacent area come and have the $1.50 hot dog for lunch.
Is this the place for a plug? Is this the 3 people that are watching online got to
So
hear you?
does Tulsa have the same situation as you're proposing, where there are no pedestrian pathways? How's your store in Tulsa set up?
I did not do Tulsa.
I don't recall seeing them.
Yeah.
Because when I park, I do just what I described. I get out of the car, go to the back of the car, and I just, you watch for traffic. But it doesn't feel congested, or it certainly feels a lot different to me than going to the mall or going to, one of the other stores. And I think the point about the fact that, if you're there, you're shopping at Costco, that's the only place you're shopping. Where you've got a center where there are other businesses located, then I think, the argument for safe pedestrian access, from the parking lot up to the shopping area is probably merited. The other thing we haven't talked about is architectural metals, and I do not have any objection to the use of architectural metals on this application.
Yeah, I think that's true. I don't think it would offend public sentiment in this instance. I don't think this is the type of metal that the code's trying to prevent. And so I don't think, I personally have an objection with the first variance. The second, a little bit closer call for me. I understand the chair's concerns that maybe one of the elements that's not met is that it's the minimum necessary to alleviate the hardship. If you could find a way to add 1 or 2 sidewalks in this plan, you'd be seeking a variance instead of all of them, only a small percentage of them. That, at the same time, I think this is a bit peculiar to get to the first and second pieces here, in that you do have these oversized parking spots and arguably oversized driving lanes that might admit for an exception.
If I thought there was a health and safety issue and that this, created an unsafe place for pedestrians to traverse, I would not approve of his request. But having been a customer and having shopped, numerous times at the facility in Tulsa, and knowing and appreciating a larger place to park and a deeper place to park, and the full 24-foot, plus the additional depth in the parks. I'm going to support your application.
Two things. I also weigh in on the architectural metal. As the staff had noted, we see it up and down in the area, and it's not. We've approved architectural metal in other locations. We have a little bit of resistance on the second variance, and didn't know if you wanted to maybe get a continuance and think about it a little bit, or maybe provide an alternative. I'll defer to the board on this, but just as an idea, what your thoughts are on that, or if you want us to vote today.
I'm going to support the application.
Even if I were to put one on the east side, going, say, from the warehouse to the gas station, because I'm so tight from a north-south dimension, I'm going to lose, I'm losing 25, 30 stalls, just with putting one pedestrian walkway in that nobody will use. I've done 88 of these. I've been doing Costco's for 26 years. And I'll tell you, the one in Pittsfield Township, Michigan, they made us put 2 pedestrian walkways in. Those walkways are loaded with carts.
Sure. I don't think it's our position to judge the wisdom of certain provisions of the code. It's our job to just enforce them. And same goes with the use, with people putting carts in them. I don't think that's really for us to judge. That said, I mean, I think I could support it if the board wanted to support this. I think this is a unique enough layout. If this were a situation where there were smaller parking spots or something, I would have a lot bigger objections. But I could entertain supporting this as is.
We ready for a motion? Is there anybody else here to speak? I know we had some.
Do we have anybody who wants to be heard on this matter? Okay, I entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve case number 14511, that it has met the statutory requirements for a variance.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your vote. It passed.
Thank you.
Both variances. This were on both variances.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Item number 9, case number 14512, request for a variance to the maximum number of accessory signs and for level 2 electronic message display over 50% of the allowable area in the AA Agricultural District located at 3600 South Sarah Road.
Do you mind if I pass these out?
You, Jess?
Yeah, I am Jess. I'm sorry, I filled one of those out. I'm Jess Schweinberg with Metro Sign 401 North Ann Arbor. I'm here for the Mustang Public Schools. In front of you, we're requesting kind of a unique situation here. This property is zoned agricultural. Agricultural only allows 2 signs. As you'll see, one sign, I apologize. Thank you, John. I took this picture this morning so you could see what they have on the front of the building. The sign in question that we're asking for the variance for is a monument sign. It's been there since the school was opened. School's been open a little over 2 years, I think, 2.5 years. I want to bring one thing into attention is the new turnpike will be going just south of this school. Presently, that speed zone's 45 miles an hour. I know that Oklahoma City is proposing the widening of Sarah Road when funds are available, and I know it's also in cooperation with ODOT, or the Turnpike Authority, as Mustang is going to be expanding Sarah Road south of 59th, which goes into Mustang. I don't know what Oklahoma City's going to go. They're probably going to go 3 lanes, maybe 4. I know Mustang's going to go 3. So this area is going to get highly congested at 45 miles an hour presently, unless the school's in place and the people are turning to get in there. It's a 50, 55 mile an hour road, traveled quite frequently, and traffic is horrendous. The sign that I just passed out to you is about 100, 125 foot off of Sarah Road. If you look at it closely, it sets inset on a drive-it, finished wall, being blocked by the brick columns. So it really is not a sign that does any good as far as communicating.
That's what you're referring to as a monument sign.
The monument sign is about 60, 70, 80 foot from Center Road. I'm talking, yeah, that there is just the entrance to the school. The monument sign is a necessity. It's not permitted. It never was permitted. So if the sign had been permitted, I wouldn't even be coming here in front of you guys. But it was never permitted. It was installed and built at the time the school was built. So first thing I'm asking for is just please permit that sign. Give me a variance to allow that sign. If you allow that sign, then I would be allowed to put a message center on it for the school. My second variance is I'd like to go to level 2 to allow a little bit of movement, not video, just movement because of the size of the sign. The monument sign itself, as it sits, as we are proposing it, is well under what is allowable in agricultural zoning. The problem is there's two signs, one on the building, one on the front of the road. Mustang School System is one of the largest school districts in the state. This is one of 2 schools in the whole district that does not have an LED message center. It is the common practice to how to communicate with parents and students. It's the most affordable way.
Do we know what the allowable sign area is and what the proposed sign area is?
John, correct me if I'm not wrong, a monument sign's allowed 100 square foot, 8 foot overall height is the restriction. That entire sign with the message center will be teetering right around 50, 60 square foot. The sign portion of this sign is only about 32 square foot. The brick, because Oklahoma City requires, if the base structure is over 30 inches, to be included into the total square footage. So the total square footage of this sign, when complete, will be right around 50 to 60 square foot. The letters on the building are 12-inch overall height, flat cutout letters. However you want to compute the square footage on it, we will be under 100 square foot total cumulative.
So the issue is 1 versus 2 signs and the 50% threshold?
Correct. They're only allowed 1 sign, so they need a variance for 2. They can have the EMD sign, but it'd have to be static. Every 8 seconds it will change. They're asking for EMD 2 so it could scroll in, scroll out, fade out, but not a video. That video would be in level 3.
And the reason for the fade in and the fade out and a little bit of movement is because the size of it is small.
Is it perpendicular to the street?
Yes, sir, it is perpendicular to the street.
So it's only logical to have EMD on both sides so that you
Yes,
see
sir.
traffic from both
Yes, sir.
directions.
You have already built the monument. It's already built. What was the size again of it?
Clarify that I didn't build anything. Yes, the monument sign is built.
There is one attached to one of your exhibit photos, although you didn't bring it today like you did the wall, but it shows the monument.
Do you have it in?
It's the bottom picture, I think.
Do most of these signs at other schools, I mean, are they for events or do they provide?
They're really, the message center's used in, I mean, when we're talking about schools, you have your elementary, your mid-high, and then your high school. High school is communicating to not only the parents, primarily to the students, because most of them are driving or bringing a bus in. Mid-high, teeters back and forth between parents and kids. But elementary, it's nothing more than a communication to the parents. Most of the kids at that age are not reading a message center anyway, and it's used both for both community and to better communicate to the parents on upcoming events or what's going on. within the school.
What does the existing monument sign say? Does it just have the school's name?
Yes, it does, and I apologize if I can pass this around.
One of the things that I think about is, the fact that you've got a moving sign, it's like television. You have a tendency to quit watching your driving and to read the sign. And you don't want to create any additional hazards. You've got a place where children are present and families are present. And are you creating an additional distraction for people that you hope are paying full attention to their driving?
I'm not sure I want it to be M2. What about, why don't we go with just the one?
I have no objections to EM1. It's just that the sign itself is so small. It's very difficult to maximize the full use of the sign. But we're not opposed to EM1. The reality is this is so far off from the road, and the configuration of this property, there's not students walking within in this area, and there won't be.
But we need to know, since we're approving the
I
second
understand.
sign, we need to know what the monument, we need to have a measurement to go by.
I have absolutely no objections to EM1, and we would get EM1.
The EMD1 sign is permitted. He doesn't need anything for that. He can have that. He just needs a variance. If we're going to stay with EMD1, he just needs a variance for 2 signs.
Right, and on the second sign, we don't have the exact size of that monument sign, do we, or do we?
No, he's talking about it being close to around 50 square feet or so.
Yeah, the overall height of the sign's 5.5 foot, and it's about 8 foot wide existing sign, so it's right at about 45 to 52 square foot, depending on how you measure the flashing coming off and all of that.
He's not going to have a problem with going over 100 square feet. He'll be under that.
I would be comfortable approving an EMD1 in this application.
I would too.
It doesn't need approval for an EMD1. EMD1 is permitted.
Then I would be comfortable
Yeah, I think,
allowing 2 signs.
in that regard, if we approve the first variance, essentially we would be denying the second on the basis that we would rather.
You wouldn't even hear the second. You don't
Well,
even have
because
to.
the application contains the language
that-
about
I'm
the
sorry,
EMD.
yes,
I think we
okay.
should state that, the EMD sign will be the allowable signage and that we would approve
Deny
the
the second.
variance for the sign.
So we're here to hear a motion on the variance as to the maximum number of accessory signs. Is the motion on that?
Sam, you're the attorney. Make the motion. I'll second.
Sure. So I'd move to approve in part case number 14512. Move to approve the variance to section 1024A for the maximum number of signs and deny the variance request for 1026B1 concerning level 2 EMD signs.
I appreciate it.
Second.
Second. Motion is second. Are we ready to cast our votes? No, sorry.
Thank you for your time.
Item number 10, case number 14513, request for a variance to the maximum square footage and number of signs in the R1 Single Family Residential District located at 8500 Northwest 23rd Street.
Do we have anybody here?
I'll move to continue until the next meeting, a one-time continuance at a courtesy of the applicant, case number 14513.
Second, anybody?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to continue 14513. Ms. Kester votes. I guess I... on the agenda, and I need to have my microphone on. And do we have any other matters to take up on or consider, any items you would like to bring up? I'm seeing nothing. We could declare ourselves adjourned without
Congratulations on your first meeting, well done, and I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, cast your votes. Motion passed.